Hello from Blades Music. Tonight's video is about the FaderPort 8 and Studio One, specifically 5 reasons why you want to use the FaderPort 8 with Studio One coming up next. Alright, so the last video that I did on the FaderPort 8 was how to use it in Cakewalk by BandLab, specifically in Mackie MCU mode. And I said in that video there are a number of things that aren't as optimal as could be. Specifically, this device works really well in Studio One. Of course, both Studio One and the FaderPort are made by PreSonus. So of course we expect it to be better in there. But I'm going to show you a couple of the ways that it is, in addition to ways that it actually works in the other DAWs as well. But specifically these 5 things that are awesome about this. So before I go into that, I want to ask you to please click the subscribe, click the like, share this video with others. That would be really helpful for me. 2021, trying to get those subscription numbers up. In my analytics, about 98% of the people who watch my videos aren't subscribers. Would love to have you as a subscriber, so click that button. So, getting on with it. 5 reasons why this thing is awesome. The first 4 are going to be pretty cool. The 5th one, if y'all hang around till the end, is, I think, the best of the 5. So, number 1, this whole transport section over here. Everything kind of like from the big wheel on down, even though this is really traditionally the transport section itself down here at the bottom. All of these other things have to do with also navigating your projects in Studio One. So why this is cool? Of course, you've got your play and your stop and your forward and your rewind and your return to 0 when you hold these 2 buttons together. Right, you'll see there's a little RTZ right there that'll return you to 0 and then turn your loops on and off. These are, I think, and record, of course. These, I think, are the staples that you expect to be there. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off my mixer here because I want to show you how those work. So you can see, my forward and rewind, they go in a kind of random way. They're not really, locked to any kind of grid or anything like that. They're very fast, so good quick ways to zip around in the mix. If you do want to be able to move around by measure, you can also do that, which I'll show you in a minute. So, of course, you've got your play and your pause and your stop. Loop, if you happen to have an area set. Up here for looping, once you have a loop region, you can turn that loop on or off with the looping button. This will, like I said, if you're over here and you hit both of these together, you're going to go back to 0 immediately. So again, these I think are kind of the staples that we expect, but the area right above it is a very valuable area for the FaderPort because it allows you to navigate your session quickly and easily. And there's really, while there's a knob and these previous and next buttons, and then these 8 buttons below, these 8 buttons also have shift versions of those 8 buttons. And those reference 8 more functions that you can manually put on those buttons. Now for me, I have the top 4 of those buttons have the defaults of F1, F2, F3, F4, but you can assign them to be whatever you want them to be. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment. So these different buttons, channel mode, this is going to allow you to get around the track. So in channel mode, as I use the knob, you can see up on the screen up there that, and here on the select buttons, that I am moving from channel to channel. And this is kind of just the way it always works, right? And these buttons are actually, the select buttons actually follow the colors that are set to your track. So these first 3 are kind of a green color, and as I go on, these turn blue, etc., etc. So you can kind of see where you are in the track using that. If you use the next and previous buttons, what it does is it actually moves this whole section of tracks that you're looking at, this 8 tracks, right? So right now I'm tracks 1 through 9. If I hit next, I'm going to be tracks 2 through 10, 3 through 11. So it shifts this whole fader range by one track in either direction. So you can do that. Similar to the channel mode is the bank mode, which is over here on the far right. And bank, instead of moving one channel at a time, moves 8 channels at a time, right? So if you want to get from 1 to 9, if you want to look at 10 through 18, that bank button is going to let you jump that whole thing at once. So the channel and bank kind of lets you move around from place to place. Zoom allows you to zoom in horizontally or vertically. I don't honestly use this very much. There's 100 other ways, but if you're on the FaderPort, using the big wheel is going to get you horizontal zoom, and using the previous and next buttons is going to get you the vertical zoom. Again, if you're already over here, those can be useful. Scroll mode is going to allow you, like I was saying with these guys down here, you can fast forward and rewind, but scroll mode is going to let you move a measure at a time using the wheel. So 1 measure, 2 measure, 3 measure. Right, so this is going to be one of those cases where I'm actually going to use the zoom. I'm going to get all the way out here, go back over to scroll, and you can see me scrolling through 1 measure at a time over here. Now when you're in scroll mode, these guys switch to being the actual channel selectors, right? So if you want to get down to those channels. Also, one of those kinds of things that a lot of people maybe don't know is you could see right now, if you were looking at my buttons here, I'm on, lead vocal channel 1, and then I'm over here at the ride channel. But now when I go past there, nothing is selected up here. So I'm going to keep on going, and you can see on the screen, I'm all the way down here in rhythm 2. I don't have that here. This wheel actually is a button as well, and if you push that button, it will jump to that location of where you're at. Okay, so that's the top 4, and then you've got your bottom 4, right? Your master mode actually turns the wheel into a master volume control. Now I'm not going to screw around with this because my master is already set over here. I've actually got it at -2.6. I'll move it just a little bit. So you can see that kind of happening over there at the master. And we'll put that right back there where it's supposed to be. So that's one way. You can also see I just did that with a fader over here because I happen to be all the way at the far right of my channels. Out of master mode, if I put click on or off, that's just going to turn the metronome on or off. Section mode is going to let me move from section to section, and marker mode is going to let me move from marker to marker, also is going to let me place a marker. Again, using this wheel button for placing the marker. So if I'm here and I want to place a marker, I'm in marker mode. There's one, there's one, there's one. I don't really find this super useful just because I can't name them as I go without reaching for the mouse and double clicking. And at that point, I might as well just use the mouse to create the marker, but that's fine. Maybe you go back and, remember what you were doing before and go back to it later. So going back through these now in the shift modes, right? So you have a shift button here, and you can put that shift, hold, and press your buttons just like you would on a computer keyboard. Or you can press shift, let go, and it goes into shift lock mode. So you can see that this shift is actually illuminated and it stays that way. And so now all of these are in everything's in shift mode. I'm going to take it out of shift mode. First thing I'm going to look at is this is going to be the inspector, the editor, the mixer, and the browser, and those are in order. Of course, on the left you've got your inspector. All right, there's the inspector on and off. Here is the editor on and off. Here's the mixer on and off, and the browser over there on the right on and off with that. Real easy to get in and out of these views, and they make ergonomic sense. Left is the inspector, and then you've got your edit and mix, which are in the same order as these guys over here, and then browse is on the far right, which is also right in that same order. So those make sense. And then at the bottom, like I said, you've got some other shift options in there, and that's where I want to show you how you can get to what those look like. So if I go into the mix view and I go into external, and then we choose my FaderPort, and then I choose edit, we're going to get this view right here, and that shows me all of these buttons over here. And so you can see right now, I have assigned undo to the shift version of this master button. Assign it to be whatever you want. Realistically, there's an undo way up there, but it's kind of a pain to get up there. So I assigned it down here just so it's nice and close to right here at the transport, because I use undo a lot. And in Studio One, the undo function actually is better than a lot of undo functions in that, you know, it works in a way where if I put myself here in shift mode and I, you know, put my vocal in record mode, let's get this mixer out of the way. Let's get this thing out of the way. Go over there. All right, so I'm going to be up here, go return to 0. I'm going to put this lead vocal in record mode, and I'm going to hit record here, and you see I'm recording right now as we see. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom into this. Oops. We want to get out of edit mode, and I'm in zoom mode, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom into that somewhat a little bit so we can see what's going on. So you can see I'm recording right now, and the undo function that's in Studio One not only just does an undo of the last thing you recorded, but it also does a stop, undo, rewind to where you started and you're ready to go. So if I hit one key, bam, I'm right at the beginning, and that section is gone, and I can hit record again, start recording again, don't like that one either, and then I can just hit that undo one more time. And again, since we're in shift lock mode, we can also just use that individually right then. Super cool to be able to do that. And the way that you can do that is, like I said, if you go to that external thing here, right click on the button, assign a command, and then just search for the command that you want to put there. So if I wanted to put an undo, boom, select undo, and that's it. You've got undo on that button. You can put it wherever you want. Hey, if you like to undo your stuff a lot, assign them all to undo. You have lots of options. All right, so seriously, you can assign these to, you know, whatever you want, whatever ergonomically works for you. So that whole section, number one. Number two, the fader area. Now, I think, you know, you call this a fader port and you think, well, I mean, of course the faders are cool. They're the main reason I bought this stupid thing. But what's cool about these faders is that in Studio One specifically, all of these different buttons that run down the right-hand side of the faders control the modes that those faders work in, which makes them not just faders for volume, and I think a lot of people look at that and they go, oh, look, there's volume faders. But it also allows you to do a bunch of other cool stuff. So let's take a look at what those modes are real quick here. Track mode, that's the mode I'm in right now. Of course, shows you all your tracks, right, as we've been looking at. So if I go back into channel mode and go all the way over here to the beginning. So here we are. We're on lead vocal track 1, and we can go through those different tracks. Channels, rather. All right, so we select the different channels. Good to go. And of course, mute, like I just did, solo, of course, and then mute and solo across all the different channels. This is the piece that everybody expects is just going to be there. The edit plugins button. Edit plugins is going to allow you to edit the plugins. Strange enough, right? So here I am on channel 1. I'm going to go edit plugins mode, and you can see that the console 1 and the analog delay, if you could see these strips right here, that's what they say. Those are the two that are here as my insert. So if I wanted to modify the analog delay, I click on that. And now you'll see all of this represents all of the controls on the screen. Now, I'll be honest and say I don't really do this very much, use this very much, because I'm not that attuned to it. But the stuff that's included in Studio One actually works really well for this because it's already mapped. So you can see, for example, these two things are lit. Those happen to relate to the sync and boost buttons. And if you were able to read the screens from my camera, which I know you can't, that actually says delay sync, delay beats, and feedback boost and feedback level, right? So you can see that these two buttons control the syncs there, and on the boost there. And you can see that the fader adjusts the time in beats when sync is on, and the next fader over controls the time in milliseconds if sync is off. So it's cool that there's actually two different things, because you could pretty easily switch between two different levels. You could have your thing set to, you know, 1.5 seconds, and then boom, put it back to delay beats, and you've got this guy that you can control the, you know, the synchronization beats with that delay. Same thing over here with the feedback boost and the feedback level, right? So here's the feedback level on the slider, and the feedback boost button is right there with it. Those two things make sense. And then all of these other ones go to the various different things that are on there, and every plugin will remember this setup. So it's really cool to be able to use the edit plugins. You've also got the option to do edit sends. And there's actually two modes to this. In this first mode, you can see that right now I have one send, and that's here. So I'm going to copy that over to these other two channels. So you can see that I've got one send there, and I'm going to go ahead and also add another send just for the sake of having one over here. So now I have two faders, and you can see my send levels. The two faders represent the first two sends on the first channel that I have selected, and you can see I'm adjusting those sends right there. If we press sends again, we get the first send for each of the channels. So here on the lead vocal, I've got the analog delay one. And over here on these two guys, I have the analog delay. So if I wanted to change my send level for all three of those analog delays at once, you can do that. Again, sends mode, another cool thing. And then the last mode up here is the pan mode, which for any of the individual track, if you have select and you're on that particular channel, like here I am on this channel here, it's the one I'm talking to you on, up here in the upper left-hand corner of the unit, there's a knob, and that controls the pan. So I'm over here on the left now, and now I'm over here on the right, and if I press down on that, it takes me back to center. But this other pan mode makes all the faders the pans. And this is a cool mode because it allows you to do multiple things at once. So let's say, for example, I wanted to take these two background vocals. So watch right here, and you can see all the way to the right, all the way to the left, back to center. You could do those, you know, in opposite directions at the same time, back to center. And you can automate all of that at the same time as well, which is really super cool. So those are those modes. And then you also have these other buttons down here that just allow you to choose like audio, virtual instruments, just have one of those. My buses, I've got 4 of those. My VCAs, I have none of those. So those are kind of different ways that you can look at that. You can also look at your shift versions of those to get your inputs, your MIDI, which I can't figure out what that does, your outputs, your effects channels, and then the shift all button, which is the all awesome tip number 5 at the end of this. So the next section that's really cool about this is tip number 3, and that is this automation section at the top. This is one of those sections that doesn't really work very well in the MC mode for Cakewalk, but it works really great in here. So if you're in, let's get rid of all this stuff that's all over my screen. If I'm in, let's say on this backup 2 channel, and I've got a couple of automation lanes there, and I wanted to automate the volume. Right, so here I am on the volume automation. I can put myself into these different modes, and you can see here in that automation mode area which mode I'm in: latch, touch, write, or read. And you should learn these different modes. I think for a lot of people, probably latch is the simplest one, maybe touch, I don't know, whatever you want. Once you start playing, you can actually do your automation right here on the faders, and you can see right now I'm actually in pan mode, so I'm controlling that pan automation. I'm going to put myself back in track mode, and now I'm controlling the volume automation at the same time. You saw how simple it is to do that, and I put it back in read mode, and I'm going to go back to scroll here, get back to the beginning, and I'm going to hit play, and you'll see those things playing back, you'll see my pan up here, my pan up on the screen, and now you're going to see my fader go right here on the fader port. You're also seeing the volume happen up there on the screen. Super easy to get in and out of those modes for the automation. This is fun. Like when you want to do automation, this is kind of the thing that you always thought, yeah, oh God, it would be so cool if I had faders and motorized and automation and all that kind of stuff. So this section up here, something to really play around with, get comfortable with, so you know how to use it when you actually want to. Tip number 4, fourth reason why you might want to buy this controller. It goes outside of just a FaderPort controller and becomes just a MIDI controller. So I'm going to hit the both shift buttons at the same time. Up here you'll see it goes into MIDI mode. And then in the, I gotta use my mouse for this because I'm in MIDI mode. In my series of external devices, I've got my FaderPort, but then I also have FaderPort MIDI mode, and I'm going to go into here and I'm going to hit edit. Now right now you'll see I have nothing assigned to this thing, but I'm going to learn a couple of these real quick. I'll hit MIDI learn and I'm going to move my faders, and you'll see as I create those different faders that they appear here on the screen, and I of course can change and take off MIDI learn. I can change these over to being faders instead of knobs, since they're faders. Right, so we can go ahead and make those faders here as well, and then you can assign whatever you want to those different faders to do, you know, what you're wanting them to do. So now I've got, you know, my different MIDI faders, and you'll notice that nothing is happening here in my Studio One mix. So even if I get all my MIDI faders all kind of goofy and I've got them controlling a bunch of stuff, if I get out of MIDI mode and I hit shift, bam, I'm back in regular mode, and now they're controlling my Studio One faders again. Go back over to shift, and we're back in MIDI mode. And now I'm back to controlling my different MIDI mode faders. And of course, then you can assign those to whatever you want them to be in various different plugins to being able to control those plugins. Now, I also have a keyboard over there that does this, but it's super nice to be able to get to it right away. So let's say that I happen to have, need to be not in MIDI mode, MIDI learn. Got MIDI mode, get over here, I'm going to open up. Now this is something that you do have to get accustomed to, is once you put yourself in MIDI mode, none of the regular functions on here work like you think they will. So I'm going to add my analog lab in here, just because I know this is an easy one to assign stuff to. I'll put myself in. All right, so here's my analog lab, and I'm going to choose, I don't really care what. Let's just choose something like this Swan Lake. That's great. All right, and in this view, so you've got these knobs here, right? So I'm going to take this knob, poink, poink. I'm in MIDI mode right now. So I'm going to make this knob be controlled by that fader. That fader. So here we're in FaderPort MIDI mode. We're going to control the brightness, and now we connect those two together, and now that fader controls the brightness. And let's say I'm there, come out of MIDI mode, my vocal goes back to some sense of normal, and then I can go back into MIDI mode, and I'm controlling the brightness again. So it's a really cool way to being able to get into your instruments and do some MIDI controls that aren't necessarily just FaderPort controls. So that was number 4. Number 5, I promised this one was going to be cool. Is going to be cool. So if you watched another video of mine, You will have seen that I'm using the new search mode in the new functions here. So it's kind of like in this, let's see, where are you? Not there, in here. In this filter mode, if you search for stuff, you can limit your channels based on that. Also in this mode, you'll notice this little remote option here that allows your faders on screen to match your faders on the remote. The other piece of that is this shift all mode that you want to be in. And once you're in there, those things, this remote and shift all and these searches all kind of work together if you set it up that way, like I've got mine. So you'll notice I've got my vocals on V, drums on D, colon. All of my drums have this D colon in front of them, that kind of thing. I have macros set to set the channel view to be V colon or D colon or G colon or whatever. And then I've got keyboard shortcuts set up for these keys right here on the side of my actual gaming keyboard. So I've got the top is yellow, green, blue, purple, pink, green, blue, purple, and then pink is over there. So those all align to those different things, and each one of these goes with one of those shortcuts. So what you're going to see happen here is I'm in all mode right now, so I've got everything on. But if I go down to drum mode, you can't see it immediately. On the screen you can see that. Now I've got the drum channels. Over here I actually really do just have the kick through the hand sonic are here on the view. Easy to see it though when I put it in vocal mode because I only have 3 vocal channels, a lead and 2 backups, right? Boom. 3 vocal channels over here, 3 vocals on screen. Let's go to the guitars. There's my guitar tracks. They automatically match between the screen and the FaderPort, and one button gets that view. So I'm not having to jump around between the different channel views and the bank views so much. I still can use those functions to get, like, from if I have, you know, for example, if I go to my drums and I have a couple extra channels on there, I might need to scroll over to the side of those with these extra buttons over here. But this way, super easy way to get in and out of all of your tracks or just subsets of your tracks really fast, super intuitively, and that is like one of the coolest things that I found. So I hope this video has been useful for you. I hope you'll subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with somebody else. And hey, if you want to go buy a FaderPort, go buy a FaderPort. It's an awesome device. Works awesome with Studio One. Thanks for watching. Thanks for taking the time out of your day. Have a good one.